2 a.m. at a deserted gas station, shrouded in a misty drizzle, a police officer stepped inside, unaware that in just a few minutes, both his life and that of an innocent person would hang precariously on the edge of life and death. The young clerk behind the counter, hands trembling, scrawled a desperate message onto the receipt, a silent plea for help. When the officer unfolded the paper, his eyes darkened, and his heartbeat pounded in his chest, sensing a horrifying scheme about to unfold. What had driven the boy to write those words? And who was lurking in the shadows? The old gas station stood alone on Highway 50. Ethan Parker, a 22-year-old black man with pale blue eyes and wind-tousled hair, wiped down the counter for the 10th time that night. The clock read 2 a.m. The radio crackled with news of an approaching storm, but Ethan wasn't listening. His mind was stuck on the faint groan he'd heard from the storage room behind the station the night before. He hadn't dared to check, terrified that his suspicions were right, terrified that something terrible was happening right under his nose. The glass door swung open, cutting through his thoughts. Lieutenant Jack Ramsey, a patrol officer in his early 40s, stepped inside. His face was scarred, his sharp eyes like a blade, and his stance radiated the hardened resolve of a man who had stared down countless criminals. "Fill up the patrol car. Now," Jack said, his voice low and gruff, tossing a credit card onto the counter. Ethan nodded, his hands moving swiftly to process the transaction, though his gaze flickered toward the patrol car outside, tense. As the receipt printer clattered, Ethan picked up a pen, his hand shaking so badly that the cap slipped from his fingers. He stole a glance at Jack before scribbling on the corner of the receipt. "They are here. Save her." Folding the paper, he handed it back with a credit card, forcing his face to remain neutral. Jack frowned and unfolded the receipt. His expression darkened as he read the message, fingers tightening around the paper. He fixed Ethan with a sharp look. "Who's here? Who is she?" His voice was low, but commanding. Ethan swallowed hard, whispering, "They're in the back storage room. A girl. They took her yesterday. I heard her screaming, but I was too scared to do anything. They have guns." Before Jack could respond, the harsh glare of headlights sliced through the night. A black SUV rolled up to the station and stopped. Two men stepped out, one tall and wiry with a snake tattoo on his neck, the other stocky, a cigar glowing between his fingers. Their cold eyes swept over Ethan and Jack as they entered. "Kid," the tattooed man rasped, his voice rough. "Fill up the tank. Now." Jack recognized the danger. He feigned calmness, slipping a hand into his pocket as if reaching for his wallet, but in reality, he was positioning it closer to the gun holstered at his hip. He glanced at Ethan, signaling with his eyes, "Act normal." Ethan gave a slight nod and stepped outside to pump the gas, but his hands were shaking so badly that some fuel spilled onto the ground. The stocky man sneered. "Careful, kid. Don't make me teach you how to do your job." Meanwhile, Jack caught a faint, muffled whimper from the storage room, not loud, but enough to confirm Ethan's story. "She's in there. And these two aren't just passing through." Jack made a split-second decision. He needed a distraction. "Hey, you guys know the way to Highway 95? I'm new to this patrol route." The tattooed man tilted his head, smirking. "A cop getting lost? Maybe I should take you there myself." But the moment he turned slightly, Jack moved. In a flash, he drew his gun and aimed it straight at the man's head. "Hands up. Now." The stocky man reacted instantly, lunging forward to grab the gun. Jack fired, one clean shot to the leg. The man collapsed with a scream, clutching his bleeding thigh. Amid the chaos, the tattooed man reached for a knife at his belt and lunged at Jack. They struggled violently. Jack barely dodged the blade, but not before it grazed his arm, leaving a thin line of blood. Ethan, frozen outside, panicked but acted fast. He grabbed a nearby gas canister and hurled it at the tattooed man. The canister shattered, dousing him in fuel. Jack shouted, "Ethan, run!" But Ethan didn't run. His eyes flicked to the counter. He grabbed a matchbox, struck a match, and tossed it onto the puddle of gasoline. Flames erupted. The tattooed man shrieked, dropping to the floor, rolling frantically to put out the fire. Jack seized the moment, kicking the knife away and locking the wounded man in handcuffs. But the danger wasn't over. From the back storage room came a desperate scream, followed by the sharp crash of breaking glass. Jack sprinted toward the noise, gun raised, Ethan stumbling after him, legs shaking. Inside the pitch-dark room, they found her, a young woman, no older than 19, her blonde hair matted with sweat, wrists bound tightly to a chair. Standing over her was a third man, tall and wiry, clad in a tattered jacket. A pistol was aimed directly at her head. "Let my friends go," he snarled, "or she dies." Jack didn't hesitate. One shot rang out, His bullet struck the man's wrist, sending the gun clattering to the floor. The man crumpled, howling in pain. Jack rushed forward, untying the girl as Ethan stood frozen, panting. She gasped through sobs. "They took me from the bus. They were going to ransom me to my father." Minutes later, state police swarmed the station. The 3 kidnappers were taken into custody, and the girl, Lily, was rushed to the hospital. Jack turned to Ethan, clapping a firm hand on his shoulder. "You've got guts, kid. If it weren't for that note, I wouldn't have known what the hell was happening." Ethan let out a dry chuckle, masking the tremor inside him. "I just did what I had to do," he said, but his eyes remained fixed on the pile of ashes where the flames had died, the very spot where the tattooed man had writhed in agony. As the police and ambulances pulled away, leaving the gas station wrapped in eerie silence, Ethan turned back to the counter, beginning to clean up the shattered glass and spilled gasoline. Then, suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. A message from an unknown number flashed across the screen. "Thank you. But be careful. They weren't working alone." Ethan's heartbeat pounded in his chest. He looked around. The desert stretched out in all directions, a vast black void beyond the weak glow of the neon lights. "Who sent this?" he muttered, gripping the phone tighter. He typed back, "Who are you? Who's watching me?" The message failed to send. The reply came back instantly. "Number does not exist." A chill ran down his spine. The next day, Ethan tried to return to normal. But his mind kept replaying last night's events, the muffled cries from the storage room, Lily's terrified eyes, and most of all, that cryptic message. As he pumped gas for an old pickup truck, the radio inside the cab crackled with a news report. Nevada State Police have uncovered a kidnapping ring in Las Vegas, but the main suspect remains at large. Authorities warn citizens to be cautious of organized criminal networks. Ethan froze, sweat beading on his forehead. Organized networks. He wondered if those 3 men had only been the tip of something much bigger. Later that afternoon, Jack returned. This time, he wasn't in uniform. A worn leather jacket replaced his patrol gear. He pulled Ethan aside, his voice low and serious. "Lily's awake. She told us her father's a businessman in Vegas. Owes a major gang a lot of money. They took her to force him to pay up. But there's something off. One of the guys we arrested, he said they were just hired muscle. There's someone else calling the shots. Someone they call the boss." Ethan frowned. "So why are you here?" Jack gave a half shrug. "Because you're already involved. And I figured you deserved to know the truth." Before Ethan could respond, a black sedan rolled up at the far end of the gas station. Its headlights remained off. Ethan saw movement inside the car but couldn't make out any faces. Jack stiffened. "Shit. They're here." He grabbed Ethan and pulled him behind the counter, his grip tightening around his gun. "Listen," Jack whispered. "If I don't make it out, you run. Don't look back." But Ethan shook his head. "I'm done running." The gas station door swung open once more. This time, a different man stepped in, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an immaculate white suit. Dark sunglasses hid his eyes, even though the night had already fallen. He walked forward, his left hand holding a small briefcase, his right tapping a silver coin against the counter. "Kid," the man murmured, his voice smooth as velvet but ice-cold underneath. "You screwed up my operation last night. But I'm not mad. I just want what the girl left behind." Ethan's blood ran cold. "She left nothing behind," he sneered, opening the suitcase. Inside was a small metal device, blinking red. "She hid it in the storage room. And now I need it. Hand it over, or this gas station goes up in flames." Jack sprang from his hiding spot, aiming his gun at the man's head. "Stay still, or you won't have time to regret it." But the man in the white suit only chuckled, pressing a button on the device. A small explosion erupted from the storage room, sending thick smoke billowing into the air. In the chaos, Ethan suddenly recalled. When he had untied Lily, she had whispered something he couldn't catch, and her hand seemed to have slipped something into the seat's crevice. Without hesitation, he dashed behind the storage room, ignoring the smoke and fire, and found a small USB drive wedged between the charred wooden planks. When Ethan returned, Jack was grappling with the man in the white suit. The man had drawn a knife, stabbing Jack in the shoulder, but Jack roared in pain, pinning him to the ground and firing a shot into his leg. The man collapsed with a groan, yet still smirked. "Kid, you think you've won? This is just the beginning." The police arrived moments later, executing Jack's planned ambush and taking the man into custody. But his eyes locked onto Ethan's, carving an unspoken promise. This isn't over. Jack, clutching his bleeding shoulder, glanced at the USB in Ethan's hand. What's in there that they want so badly? Ethan shook his head. I don't know, but I'll find out. He slipped the USB into his pocket, his gaze more determined than ever. Ethan sat in the cramped motel room, breathing heavily as he stared at his laptop screen. The small USB drive plugged into the port revealed an encrypted file with glaring text. Project Raven, Doomsday Plan. Before he could read further, his phone buzzed. Don't open it. Run, if you want to live. Ethan froze, heart pounding. Through the window, headlights swept across the narrow alleyway. A black SUV pulled up in front of the motel. Two men in suits stepped out, their eyes cold and sharp. Without hesitation, Ethan yanked out the USB, shoved it into his jacket, and shut the laptop. He dashed to the back window, flung it open, and leaped into the dark alley below. Upstairs, the door was kicked open. Footsteps thudded against the floor. He went out the back. Ethan didn't dare look back. He just ran. Another message popped up on his phone screen. Get to the subway station. Exit 7. Immediately. He sprinted through the empty streets, dodged oncoming traffic, and slid down the subway stairs. At exit 7, just as the message had said, a woman in a long coat stood waiting. When she saw him, she nodded and gestured for him to follow. Get on the train. Now. We don't have much time. Ethan didn't ask questions. He simply obeyed his instincts and stepped onto the train. The doors shut behind them. Through the window, he saw the two men in suits rushing down the stairs, but they were too late. Who are you? Ethan asked, still breathless from the chase. The woman didn't answer right away. She studied him through dark sunglasses, her sharp gaze taking him in. Even under the dim train lights, Ethan could see her striking features and commanding presence. Her short black hair was neatly trimmed, her face was both delicate and resolute, and the gray business suit over a black t-shirt only added to her air of mystery and professionalism. My name is Sarah, she finally said. Her voice was low but clear, devoid of emotion. And right now, I'm the only one who can keep you alive. Ethan frowned. Alive? Because of this USB. He held up the tiny drive in his hand. What the hell is in here that so many people want me dead for? Sarah exhaled, turning to look out the train window as darkness blurred past. You've stumbled into something far bigger than you can imagine, Ethan. Project Raven, it's not just some ordinary plan. It's a conspiracy that could change the world. And the people behind it will do anything to protect their secret. Ethan's heart pounded faster. A conspiracy that changes the world? You're exaggerating. Are we talking terrorism? Sarah shook her head. Terrorism is just a small piece of it. Project Raven is far more sophisticated. It's about power, money, and control. They want to manipulate information, destabilize society, and even ignite wars. Ethan was stunned. He was just a gas station clerk. He had never imagined he'd be caught up in something of this scale. But why did Lily have this USB? And why are they trying to kill me? Lily, that girl is the daughter of Senator James Harding, Sarah explained. He is one of the few people in the government who knows about Project Raven and has been trying to expose it. Lily stole that USB from her father's office, hoping to leak it to the press. But they kidnapped her before she could do anything. So, I'm holding the evidence that could take down a massive criminal organization. Ethan stammered, his hand trembling as he clutched the USB. Sarah nodded. Exactly. And that's why your life is in serious danger. They won't stop until they get it back. But why are you helping me? Ethan was still skeptical. Who are you? Police. FBI. Sarah gave a cryptic smile. I work for another organization. We've also been investigating Project Raven, and we need that USB to expose the full extent of their conspiracy. Another organization? Ethan's confusion deepened. You mean? No time to explain, Sarah interrupted. We need to get off this train at the next stop and find a safer place. She scanned the train car warily, as if checking for potential threats. Do you know how to use a weapon, Ethan? Ethan stiffened. A weapon? No. I've never. Then learn fast, Sarah said, her voice cold and firm. In the world you've just stepped into, you're either prey or predator. You need to decide which one you want to be. She reached into her bag, pulled out a sleek black handgun, and placed it into Ethan's hand. Take it, and learn to use it. Both our lives may depend on it. Ethan's fingers closed around the cold metal, his heart pounding. He had never imagined himself holding a gun, but in this situation, he had no other choice. He met Sarah's gaze, determination hardening his features. "I'll learn. I won't let them take this USB. I'll help you expose Project Raven." "Good," Sarah nodded, a flicker of approval in her eyes. "The next stop is Central Station. We'll get off there and disappear into the crowd. From this moment on, trust me, I'll lead the way." When the train pulled into Central Station, the doors slid open, and Sarah swiftly led Ethan into the rushing crowd. They weaved through narrow hallways, past bustling shops, trying to disappear into the sea of people. But Ethan couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping up his spine, as if someone was watching them. He knew their escape had only just begun, and the real danger was still ahead. Suddenly, amid the swarm of people, Ethan caught a glimpse of a familiar face. A tall man in a black suit, with a snake tattoo on his neck, one of the guys who had kidnapped Lily at the gas station. His heart stopped. They had found them. "Sarah," Ethan whispered, grabbing her arm. "It's him. The tattooed guy." Sarah spun around, her eyes instantly tensing as she spotted their pursuer. "Damn it! They're faster than we thought." She quickly pulled Ethan into a smaller corridor, out of the tattooed man's line of sight. "Run! We have to get out of this station now." They sprinted through the twisting hallways, dodging hurried commuters, pushing past crowds. The pounding footsteps of their pursuers echoed behind them, growing louder. Ethan felt his heart hammering in his chest. He had never run this fast in his life, but he knew that if they got caught, his fate would be no different from Lily's, if not for the intervention of the police. Just then, at the end of the corridor, two more men in black suits stepped forward, blocking their exit. One of them was the burly thug from the gas station last night. They advanced with cold, menacing glares. "End of the line, kid," the burly man growled, his voice rough. "Hand over the USB, and maybe we'll let you live." Ethan tightened his grip on the gun in his hand, glancing at Sarah with fierce determination. He knew this could be his last stand. He had come too far to turn back now. "Not a chance," Ethan gritted out. "I won't let you take it. I will expose Project Raven." Sarah nodded, fire burning in her gaze. "Then let's fight, Ethan. Let's show them we're not so easy to take down." And with that, they charged into battle. A fight for survival. Just when Ethan and Sarah thought they had reached a dead end, a familiar deep voice rang out amid the blaring alarm. "Police! Stop right there!" Everyone in the train station jerked their heads around in surprise. From behind the two men in black, Lieutenant Jack suddenly appeared. He was back. His face was still cold and scarred, but his eyes burned with fury. He was no longer wearing his usual patrol uniform. This time, he had on a leather jacket and rugged jeans. But the sleek black handgun in his grip was unmistakable. The tattooed man and the muscular man froze, staring at Jack in shock. "Police!" the tattooed man growled. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I'm here to stop you from doing something stupid," Jack replied, his voice sharp as steel. "Drop your weapons. Now." "You're alone," the muscular man sneered. "What do you think you can do to us?" "Maybe nothing," Jack shrugged. "But I can make today a lot worse for you." And with that, he suddenly fired. The muscular man recoiled, clutching his bleeding arm. Jack didn't give him a chance to react. He stepped forward swiftly, kicking the gun out of the tattooed man's hand. "Run!" Sarah shouted to Ethan, shoving him toward the nearby hallway. "This is our chance." Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed Sarah's hand, and they took off, weaving through the panicked crowd scrambling for an escape. As soon as they slipped out of sight, Sarah pulled Ethan into a hidden passage she had noticed earlier. It was a narrow, dimly lit corridor that seemed to lead to the station's maintenance area. "Follow me," Sarah whispered. "We'll escape this way." They carefully descended the stairs. The air around them was thick with dampness, the space cold and suffocatingly dark. They moved deeper into the basement, their ears straining for any sound. The eerie silence was broken only by the echo of their footsteps. Suddenly, Sarah stopped and raised a hand, signaling Ethan to stay quiet. She listened intently before whispering, "I hear footsteps. Someone's coming." Ethan shuddered, feeling a chill run down his spine. They weren't alone in this basement. Had their pursuers already tracked them here? "Hide behind those boxes," Sarah whispered, pointing to a stack of large cardboard boxes piled in the corner. They quickly moved into position, crouching behind the boxes, holding their breath. The sound of footsteps grew louder, closing in on their hiding spot. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He gripped his gun tightly, ready for the worst. From the dark hallway, two figures emerged. They weren't the tattooed man and the muscular one, but two completely different men. Dressed in black suits, Their demeanor was colder, more professional. One of them held a radio, speaking into it in a low voice. "They've gone down to the basement," he said. "Seal off all exits. Don't let them escape." Ethan and Sarah exchanged glances, realizing they were completely surrounded. But just when despair threatened to take hold, another voice suddenly rang out from behind the two men in black. "Pardon the interruption, gentlemen, but it seems you're blocking my way." The two men spun around in surprise. Before they could react, a dark figure lunged forward at lightning speed. A sharp thud echoed through the air as the man with the radio collapsed to the ground, unconscious. The second man barely had time to process what had happened before a powerful punch slammed into his face, sending him staggering backward before crumpling next to his partner. Ethan and Sarah stared in shock, unable to believe their eyes. Standing tall in the dimly lit hallway, like a guardian angel emerging from the shadows, was Jack. "Sorry I'm late," Jack said, his voice as casual as if he had just come back from a stroll. "Traffic here's a nightmare." He winked at Ethan and Sarah, a rare smile playing on his scarred face. "Let's go. We've got work to do." Decoding the USB was only the beginning of a perilous journey. Would they have the strength to uncover the full secrets of Project Raven and survive? The answer awaits in Part 2. Stay tuned for the next chapter.